Families are meant to be the safest place on earth, a haven where we can be our true selves without fear of judgment. But sometimes, the very people we love the most become the ones we struggle with the hardest. Family conflicts can turn peaceful homes into battlegrounds, filled with arguments, misunderstandings, and emotional distance. What starts as a small disagreement can grow into something much bigger, a wall of silence, built brick by brick with hurtful words, pride, and unspoken resentment. When this happens, it's easy to feel trapped, helpless, and even hopeless. Every family faces conflict at some point. It's a part of human nature. Different personalities, opinions, and expectations will always clash. Parents expect children to obey and respect them, while children crave freedom and understanding. Siblings compete for attention. Spouses argue over finances, decisions, or simply because they've forgotten how to communicate. These moments of tension are painful because they touch the deepest parts of our hearts, the parts that long for love and acceptance. When that love feels distant, anger and frustration take its place. But what if these conflicts are not punishments or signs of failure, but time's calls to grow, to understand, and to love more deeply? Every argument carries a hidden message, a lesson waiting to be learned. Perhaps it's teaching us patience, empathy, or the importance of listening without reacting. Maybe it's revealing wounds from the past that still need healing. When we look at family problems through this lens, they become opportunities, painful, yes, but transformative. Think about a time when you felt misunderstood by someone close to you. The hurt was probably real and heavy, but maybe, if you look deeper, that person wasn't trying to hurt you, they were struggling to express their own pain. Children who act out aren't always bad or disrespectful. They may be seeking attention, love, or validation they don't know how to ask for. Parents who seem controlling may simply be afraid of losing their children or repeating mistakes from their own past. Each person's actions, no matter how difficult, are often driven by fear, insecurity, or unhealed wounds. Conflict becomes dangerous only when we stop trying to understand. Silence grows, hearts close, and the bond weakens. The home, which should be a place of safety, turns into a space filled with tension and distance. But healing begins the moment one person decides to listen, truly listen. Not to reply or win the argument, but to understand. That simple act of empathy can break years of bitterness. It's not easy, but it's powerful. Families don't heal through perfection. They heal through compassion. They heal when someone says, I know we've hurt each other, but I still care. They heal when we choose love over pride, when we take responsibility for our own part in the pain. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means being brave enough to move forward without letting the past control us. When we start seeing family conflicts as opportunities for growth rather than signs of failure, everything changes. The shouting becomes communication in progress. The misunderstandings become lessons in patience. And the resentment that once felt unbearable slowly turns into empathy. Maybe that's what answering the call really means. Not giving up when things get hard, but facing the struggle with an open heart. Because behind every argument lies a chance to reconnect, to rebuild trust, and to remember that love is still there, waiting beneath the noise. Families aren't perfect, but they're worth fighting for. And sometimes it takes the fire of conflict to reveal the strength of love that never truly faded. Children are often seen as reflections of their parents, yet few things are more misunderstood than a child's behavior. When a child becomes difficult, defiant, angry, distant, or uncooperative, many parents react with frustration. They may see disobedience, disrespect, or rebellion. But behind most difficult behavior lies something deeper: confusion, pain, or a desperate attempt to be seen and heard. A child rarely misbehaves just to cause trouble. Often they are expressing emotions they cannot yet put into words. Think of a child throwing a tantrum, refusing to talk, or answering back. It's easy to label them as stubborn or spoiled. But what if that behavior is a cry for connection? A child who feels unseen will act out just to get attention, because even negative attention feels better than being ignored. Similarly, a teenager who shuts down or rebels might be struggling with identity, loneliness, or pressure they don't know how to explain. When parents respond only with punishment instead of understanding, the distance grows. The child feels rejected, the parent feels disrespected, and resentment takes root in both hearts. Adults aren't any different. Parents, too, carry their own pain. They might be fighting silent battles, stress, regret, financial struggles, or unhealed wounds from their own upbringing. Sometimes, their anger toward their children isn't really about the child. It's about fear. Fear of failure, of losing control, or of being judged. A father who yells might actually be terrified his child will make the same mistakes he did. A mother who seems overprotective may be haunted by past trauma. When we begin to look at our loved ones not through their words or actions, but through their emotions and history, everything changes. Empathy is the bridge that can save a family. To empathize doesn't mean agreeing with everything or ignoring wrong behavior. It means pausing long enough to see the person behind the problem. When a parent says, "I see you're hurting," instead of "you're being disrespectful," a wall begins to crack. When a child says, "I feel like you never listen," and the parent responds with curiosity instead of anger, healing begins. True communication isn't just about speaking, it's about listening without defense and responding with love. Many families fall into the cycle of blame. Parents blame children for being difficult. Children blame parents for not understanding. But breaking that cycle starts when one person, just one, decides to lead with kindness. It takes strength to stay calm when emotions run high. It takes patience to hear criticism from someone you love. But that is where transformation begins. The goal isn't to win the argument, it's to win back connection. When we understand each other, resentment loses its power. Instead of reacting, we begin to reflect. Instead of shouting, we start sharing. It doesn't mean conflicts vanish overnight, but they stop defining the relationship. The home becomes a place of growth, not guilt. The child learns that love is not withdrawn during mistakes. The parent learns that control isn't the same as care. Love in a family isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. It's choosing to stay when things get hard. It's teaching through example, not through fear. It's realizing that every disagreement can be a doorway to understanding if both sides are willing to walk through it. The real strength of a family isn't measured by how often they avoid conflict, but by how they face it with honesty, patience, and compassion. When we begin to listen with our hearts instead of our egos, something miraculous happens. Difficult children become understood children. Angry parents become gentle guides. And resentment turns into respect. That is the power of empathy. It transforms not only our families, but also ourselves. It teaches us that behind every raised voice is a story that simply wants to be heard. And when we choose to hear it, love finds its way back home. Overcoming resentment within a family is one of the hardest emotional journeys a person can take. Resentment is like a slow poison. It builds quietly over time, buried beneath smiles, polite conversations, and routine life. It starts small. A harsh word never forgotten, an apology never received, a feeling of being unappreciated or misunderstood. Before long, it turns into emotional distance, where love still exists, but it is covered by layers of hurt. Families stop laughing together, meals become silent, and hearts grow heavy with unspoken pain. Yet even in those dark moments, healing remains possible if we're brave enough to answer the call to forgiveness and compassion. Forgiveness is not an easy word. It often feels unfair. Why should I forgive someone who hurt me? Why should I let go when they never said sorry? These are real painful questions. But forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened or pretending it didn't matter. It's about freeing yourself from the constant weight of anger. When you hold on to resentment, it doesn't punish the other person, it punishes you. It keeps you trapped in a moment that's already gone. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is an act of strength. It's saying, you no longer have power over my peace. In families, resentment can grow between parents and children, siblings, or even spouses. Sometimes parents feel unappreciated for their sacrifices, while children feel unheard or judged. Sometimes a sibling rivalry from childhood turns into lifelong distance. Healing these wounds requires humility, the courage to admit that we were hurt, but also that we might have hurt others too. True reconciliation begins when both sides recognize their shared humanity. No one in a family is perfect, and everyone makes mistakes driven by emotion, fear, or misunderstanding. When we begin to see that, compassion replaces blame. One of the most powerful ways to overcome resentment is through communication, honest, gentle communication that comes from the heart. It's sitting down and saying, this is how I felt, instead of, you always do this. It's asking, how can we make things better, instead of pointing fingers. Sometimes those conversations are uncomfortable, even painful. Tears may fall, voices may shake, but that's the sound of walls breaking down. Healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens when truth is spoken with love. It's also important to understand that letting go of resentment doesn't mean instant reconciliation. Some people may not change. Some may never say sorry. But forgiveness is still worth it because it sets you times free. You stop waiting for others to make things right and start choosing peace for yourself. You take your power back. The moment you decide to release bitterness, you make room for joy, laughter, and love to return. Families that learn to forgive become stronger. They realize that love isn't about perfection or constant agreement. It's about choosing each other, even after pain. Every family has storms, but the ones who survive are those who keep rowing together, even when the waves rise high. The beauty of love is that it can be rebuilt. A broken relationship can become stronger than before when both sides are willing to learn from the past instead of living in it. Answering the call to overcome resentment is answering the call to peace. It's not a one-time act. It's a daily choice. Some days, you'll feel the old anger return, and you'll have to remind yourself to let it go again. But with time, forgiveness becomes easier. The heart becomes lighter. The same faces that once triggered pain begin to bring comfort again. In the end, family isn't defined by being flawless, it's defined by being forgiving. It's the place where love is tested but never fully lost. When we answer the call to heal, to forgive, and to love despite the scars, we don't just repair relationships, we restore the very soul of what family means. Love that has endured pain becomes unbreakable. And a home that has seen forgiveness becomes sacred ground, a place where peace finally lives.